Hello and welcome to the session on leading the future with AI and APIs, a powerful duo. I want to talk you through why these two pieces or components come together and form that powerful duo or that powerful bond. First, a little bit about what the agenda is. So we're looking at how API and AI help each other. We then look how AI helps in API development, and then we look at how AI and API gateways can work together, or we look at it from a runtime perspective, while we have a design time perspective in the second part. The tennis ball is, at the time of recording, Wimbledon is going on, where we have provided the technology behind. So there's a lot of AI being used, like generating highlights of videos, and it's maybe worth watching one of those videos just to get an idea how it looks and how it's done. Now, a little bit about me. I have a background in telco. I did a lot of testing, the favorite of many developers I'm aware of. I've been living and studying in Switzerland, done my initial years in telco testing, moved on to the SOA, ESB, middleware kind of topic, then focused on business process management, business rules, moved on to mobile app development, invariably came in touch with APIs, and from there on moved on to largen my focus on a whole set of integration products IBM has. And as part of that, I also was a co-author for an integration modernization red book. Now, that's enough about me. I think this is what we're here for. We're looking at the symbiosis or the synergies that we see between APIs and AI. So on one hand, the top arrow is APIs power AI, meaning you can hardly do any meaningful AI without having APIs to access information from somewhere. That's what you need. Now, that information can be on different level. It can be on a system level, meaning you have information on infrastructure components, all these things. Then we have a business domain level where we look at meaningful APIs from a business context. And then we have the top level, the generated AI or app and dynamic APIs level, where information needs to be dynamically accessed by applications that have a context that they're acting in. Now, all this is underpinned by APIs that go through their own life cycle. And we see that life cycle on the right side: create, secure, test, manage, socialize, discover, and bits and pieces of that life cycle are supported by AI. And that's where the empowerment from AI comes to the APIs. Now, if we look one step further, or what Gartner's been saying in their hype cycle for AI, which released just in June this year, we see a few things that are of interest for us. Obviously, AI agents, having AI-ready data, so we need to be aware how the data needs to be modeled for an AI agent, for example, to understand it. Edge AI, meaning we want to push the logic as far as possible to the creation of the data, especially for industries where there's a lot happening, say logistics, production, manufacturing, these kind of industries. And then we also see that on the uprise is decision intelligence. So we need good information to make meaningful or sensible decisions there. Now, obviously, if AI has a hype cycle and we apply AI, that has an impact on how we work. And that's where the second hype cycle comes in, that also just released in June. And we see again AI agents there and AI-ready data as topic. But if you look at the left side, the text there is AI is a enabler in that sense, and we hope to augment productivity and efficiency, advise people on what they should do next, and amplify their knowledge and experience. It's absolutely not about replacing, as many would assume, because yes, you apply AI, you shift your role or your job profile a bit, and then you get to these three levels of hopefully added values then. Now, we from IBM have our own perspective on AI in integration, and partly it's because we have a broad set of integration capabilities in our portfolio, and also we have an AI product set there. So as I said, at the top, integration enables AI, and that's, I think, the easy part to understand. AI models need to be trained. They need to be enabled to be up to date. We cannot take a snapshot of something, train the model, and then hope it's all for good in a fast-paced world as we live in right now. So for that, we have the capabilities to feed current data or updated data to these AI models on a constant level or at a constant pace, and allow the model to grow with us. The more information we get, the more accurate the model will be. And I think, as I said, that's an easy to understand concept. Then the second part is how AI empowers integration, or in our specific case, APIs. This is where, again, we come to the three benefits, the augmenting of what users do, meaning deliver benefits for different users in the life cycle there. But then again, enhance effectiveness, productivity, to make things happen quicker, and not impatiently quick that we're standing there and waiting for something to happen. But there are a few things where me as a human, I take just my time. If I have an AI that helps me, wonderful. And that can be simple stuff like formatting things and making sure it's sticking to some rules that we have and guidelines that we have, or governance regulations that I need to adhere to. And then again, if I can get freed up with time that I would waste for menial tasks, if I can say so, then we have the liberty of doing real innovation. And I think humans can do innovation, because my personal feeling is AI is not there yet. And again, these are the hope. This is the hope we put into AI, where we hope for a faster delivery, enable innovation, and zero AI skill required might be a stretch, but in essence, this is what we're looking for. I don't need to know what AI model I'm using. I just need to know that what I'm using is an AI, and that will help me. And maybe I need to change the way I ask questions at the first. But again, the more mature the model gets, the more it's been trained, the better it will be. And my questioning or my statements can be a bit lazier in that sense. Now, how does that impact us on the design time side? And there's one big thing, that's agentic AI that's coming. And AI can go across different, say, dimensions of an API development activity. And one is discovery. So as of now, I have to know in which backend application or backend database a certain piece of information exists. Imagine I can describe and say, create an API that exposes sales data from first quarter 2025. And the agent knows, okay, we have a database, we have a CRM, we have a GitHub repo for that matter, but it will know where there is sales data in the APIs, or which API belongs to sales data, to be correct. So now it will start picking the right application or the right backend. It will create the API according to the specification. So that's the formal aspect of it. It knows how the specification looks for version 3, for example, and generates me that API specification. I have the governance piece. As mentioned before, I might have an interest in sticking to certain rules that my organization has put on me, like using specific security models to secure my API, or to have a certain contact in the API, certain description. These are all things that can be assessed with linting tools. So I can put that in a framework and validate every API that's going through, that they are in line with these rules. And I'm not meaning to harass somebody with these rules. It's just you have a corporate look and feel in that sense on your APIs, on your API description. And then last but not least, as I said, the testing piece, the love child of all developers, that's where the AI model can shine, or the agent can shine, and that's develop, or generate rather, test cases. We as humans might be able to think of complicated things, but the test cases that just need writing down, we might get lazy, we might get inaccurate. That's where the agent can help us and create those test cases. And not only create those, it's also it will also be able to execute them. Now I have two sides of the coin. I have the generation of the test cases where I'm supported, and I have the execution of the test cases where I'm supported again. Now I don't want to go there and say execute test case 1, 2, and 3. So the idea is we group these test cases into test suites and we run them. Again, via an API, obviously, but I can now start using them for regression testing or quality testing in a production environment where I say, does the API respond the way I'm expecting it? Because the test case is checking also the response, not only the, say, status 200 that comes back there. And then the next level is obviously, once I have these tests, I might want to optimize. I realize that there's missing information. I can start sequence certain things, possibly call multiple APIs, take bits and pieces from API 1 and bits and pieces from API 2 and put that together to a new response for an API consumer there. And that's where we look at what these agents will help us. As mentioned, the testing piece, yes, running test cases is good and nice, but usually we tend to stick to tests within what we know and what we feel comfortable with. But the fuzzy testing, meaning introducing errors by intention, is not something that we do to all the extremes that can happen. So this is where, again, a machine or an AI model can help us with doing that bulk of work to get this testing done. And as I said, I'm from Switzerland. We have special characters in French, for example, and sometimes you see applications that struggle with special characters in a different language. And this is where, again, the AI model helps us. API discovery, I've mentioned that it's really to understand and figure where our API is. Now, there are two aspects. One is I can look at it in a design time environment, meaning I can introspect a GitHub repository and say, we see certain repositories where applications are being developed. We check for new API specifications and get them into a managed state from an unmanaged state. But then we also have a runtime component there where we say, we look at Nginx, data power, our API gateway, or OpenTelemetry from an Istio or service mesh, and then get that information into our API manager to assess, do we need to manage every one of these APIs? And I think there's a lot of these, if I can say so, quick and dirty solutions happening for promotions, be it summer holidays, Christmas, Easter, all these things. And yes, you might forget one or the other API here and there that needs to be managed in the end because of, say, timelines that need to be met. And yes, we might skip one or two required steps in achieving that goal. Now let's switch to the runtime side. We have tested our APIs, we're happy, we've created the APIs that our consumers need, we publish them and people subscribe to them. But then there's the requirement that these consumers want to access AI models. And that's something we need to look at from a different perspective, because we're not in that, say, rather limited space of how a REST API looks for a say normal backend, where I know I send in this request, I get that response, and I have a very repeatable pattern there. With AI models, I have number one, I need to be aware that there's a different spectrum depending on the question that I send in there. The response will be either heavy, if I can say so, in terms of number of characters that are coming back, or something simple. So if I ask, what's the weather today in Munich? That is a very easy answer for an AI model in that sense. But if I say, give me the history on average temperatures in June in Munich, that will take, number one, a long time. Number two, the response needs to be a bit more, say, accurate or better in explaining me what the history has been. So that I mean by heavy. And how do you rate limit something like that, besides securing such an endpoint with the same mechanisms that we know from, say, traditional API management, if I say so, for a discipline that's what, roughly 10 years old. So we have the same concept of self-service registration. We assign tokens to one API that we expose. And we, on a gateway perspective, then introspect the request and the response and say, this request costs you 200 tokens, and your rate limit might be 1,000 tokens per unit of time. If it's an hour, if it's a day, that's again on the API developer or the product manager to decide. And once that is done, these APIs can be used exactly in the same way that we use any other API that's published in the portal. Just we have the transparency in the portal where these are visible, what all is available. Potentially, we don't have to invent or reinvent the wheel. We can use that API and just embed it in our application. Once these APIs are being used, we're obviously interested in monitoring usage because, one, there's no use in maintaining something that's not being used. I would call that a flaw in knowing your target audience, and be rude. The other thing is, obviously, there might be some AI models in this case that are being used excessively or more than others. And if you know that, you can see which applications are using them, how many tokens are they consuming or using up. And if you look at something like internal costing, so having the root cause of the cost of your infrastructure, basically because of these increased amounts of requests that are hitting your backend, that is where you can look at and say, application 1 and 2, please pay more for your consumption in June. And not only that, there's also the option to then see at what time of day do these things happen. Now, if you're on containers, yes, the infrastructure can scale up. If you're not in containers, if you're in VMs, or some do containers in VMs, you'll have a limit of what your infrastructure is able to provide you. So that's again a help to see potentially where and when it hits you. And last but not least, on the runtime side, there's something I want to mention is we have a partnership with Akamai on the topic called Advanced API Security that goes beyond what we traditionally see in a API management solution where we define the formal security around an API. So with formal security, I mean, I define this is the operation, this is the method, this is the minimum I need in terms of security. So it's either client ID, it's client ID secret, it can be auth, whatever I need there. But it's all formal elements that I define. The data object that I pass through in a request or response, yes, I define it as a formal criteria for validation purposes, but potentially for a transformation, yes. But then at runtime, I never check that again. And it can be that I, as a developer or a product owner, have done a mistake in designing the API, and there's potentially a sensitive data element that I'm exposing, or I'm exposing too much for the use case of the target audience. Say we have a UI developer who wants first name, last name, and we send him the whole customer record. Yes, from a UI perspective, that won't be visible, number one, but there will be a performance impact, obviously, if you overexpose data, but then there's also a security aspect to that, because we all know the developer view in Google Chrome, I would say, that's where you can see that there's much more data coming than what you need. And unfortunately, there are bad people in the world. They would try that to use it against you. So this is where the topic of advanced API security comes in, to analyze your estate of APIs that are being used at an API gateway level or at a load balancer level, because not every API is managed to our disadvantage in that case. But then we need to understand which APIs are exposing what kind of data, assess them, assess the posture that we are in from a security point of view, and on exposing too much information, being vulnerable, and so on. And an attacker can try his attacks or her attacks, say, once a day. But in a traditional API management solution, that will show up as a 401, for example. But this solution can detect that the same user is trying, or the same application is trying regularly on the same API to get in, and detect that is a potential attack. and flag it for you and say, do you want to allow this, or do you want to block someone to be able to do this? And that's where I think this becomes powerful. Once you've done that, yes, you can automate, say, creation of tickets in a ticketed system, and it can even monitor for state changes. If nothing happens, it would automatically block these client applications from trying again. But again, this is a partnership we're running with Akamai. I think it's worth looking at their session as well, or the additional information they provide in that context. And with that, I'm at the summary, or at the end of the session. Agentic AI, or AI in general, is a hot topic. Again, the hope or the aspiration is to have time savings and powerful outcomes. Again, from a broader integration view, we are empowering integration with AI, meaning make it easier to consume or to produce integration artifacts, which is an abstract topic in the end. And the other way around, we're enabling AI with integration by feeding data into these models, make them more accurate, hopefully get more and better responses from these models, and yes, just continuously keep improving these things, so we as users in our daily life get less and less moments where we say, that must be an AI model, they don't know me yet. And this is where we're heading. With that, thank you for attending the session. Just want to point out, my colleagues had 2 sessions at the event as well. These were the ones. And if you want a demo, feel free to reach out or connect with me on LinkedIn. We can get that organized to have a more deeper conversation on the topic.